डॉक्टर बाबासाहेब आंबेडकर ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी.
Dear students, I, Dr. Shivang Patel, Associate Professor from School of Computer Science, welcome you all from the Chaitanya Studio of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University. In the lecture series of Python programming, we have started the unit Inheritance and Polymorphism, in which in the last session we have discussed various methods, method overloading and method overriding concept, that is the concept called polymorphism that we have already discussed. We have discussed with demonstration how method overloading that can be implemented, or you can say that the compile time polymorphism that can be implemented, and we have also demonstrated how to implement runtime polymorphism, or you can say that the method overriding. Now in today's session we are going to discuss the next feature or next possible characteristics of object-oriented programming, that is encapsulation and data hiding. Now this feature that can be implemented in Python programming. So you already aware in any other programming languages, the term, or you can say that the keyword encapsulation, that means you have to hide some of the data. So basically if you want to hide whatever the mechanism or working mechanism, or you want to hide the background detail from the user, in that case you are using this concept called encapsulation. So basically the inner working of the class that remains hidden from the outside world. So if you want to implement the concept of encapsulation, so the very common example, that is the class structure. In class structure you already aware that it contains attributes as well as the methods. So attributes that are nothing but the fields, and the methods, you can say that the behavior, you can change the behavior of data with the help of those methods or the functions. So whenever you are combining those data as well as methods within the class structure, then you can create or you can apply some of the control mechanism, how this data that can be accessible to multiple user, or what is the scope of those data as well as the method. So if you want to hide the mechanism or running mechanism, that will be background mechanism to the user. In that case you are using the concept called encapsulation. So what is the application? So you can add the system security with the help of this feature called encapsulation, and it is easier for future maintenance and ongoing project for scalability as well as improvement processes. So this can be implemented, or encapsulation that can be used for this kind of purpose. Now operations on data and bindings. So as we have already discussed, encapsulation refers to the act of binding data. Data, as you already aware, it is nothing but the attributes or the fields and methods. So you have to bind data as well as methods. You can say that the functions that apply to those data into one cohesive unit. So this thing that can be implemented with the help of concept called class. So that class contains data as well as the method. You can bind all together. So this way you can apply the concept called encapsulation with the help of class. For example, there is one class called bank account, and two attributes are there, balance and account number. So these are the fields or attributes of that particular class. Now methods that we are defining in the class, say for example deposit and withdraw. So here in the class structure we are having data as well as the method, we are combining all together to implement the concept of encapsulation. So whenever the class that can be implemented in your program or any of the application, then whatever the background mechanism or running mechanism, you can say that the how they can behave, that can be hide with the user. So user doesn't have to worry about how this thing that can be implemented, but the only thing is which kind of data that he or she would like to receive from the program, that is only required thing. So the user doesn't need to understand how the methods work in the background, but they only knows that they can do for the user. So what kind of data that can be inputted and the result that is expected, that is the thing that user have to manage. But how those data can be processed, how the method that will work in background, it is not the botheration of the user. So this is the main beauty of the concept called encapsulation. Now data hiding, that is protecting internal state. So we have already discussed encapsulation that can be implemented with the help of class. But how data will be hid from the outside world? And why it is required? Because you are requiring some security features of your data that not everybody can access those data or whatever the methods available in the class or in the program. In that case, you want to apply the concept called data hiding. So there is a way to implement the concept of data hiding with some keywords that you already aware, and those keywords are called access specifiers. So basically, if you want to prevent unauthorized access of any of the user to particular data or the method, or suppose you want to limit that particular scope of that particular class, or you can say that the multiple class within the program, in that case you can use this concept called data hiding. For implementation of this concept data hiding, you are requiring access specifiers, or you can say that the access modifiers, as in any other programming languages. Here also you can use public, protected and private modifiers. So public, if you are assigning particular attribute or particular method as a public, then it is accessible from anywhere. You can say that whatever the attributes or method that can be defined as public, so you can access within the class, outside the class or outside the program. So here fully access control for any of the user that will be defined here in the public. So in terms of security purpose, so public, that is lesser secure compared to other two keywords or other two access modifiers that we are going to discuss. Second one is protected, definitely more data secured compared to the public. But here you can use this concept in inheritance, in which, say for example, if you want to access some of the attributes and methods and only child class that can access, so that is limited access, or you can say that the access can be restricted with the help of this protected access specifier, because the data, or you can say that the attribute as well as method that can be accessible by that class also accessible by the child class, right? But not outside that. So still restriction is there, but technically you can still access the particular attributes and the method that we will see by demonstration. Third access specifier, that is private. It is more secure compared to the previous two. So if you are defining any of the variable, you can say that the attributes as well as the method as private, then it is only accessible within that class. Outside particular class, you can try to access whatever those private members, so it will give you the attribute error. So you cannot be able to access whatever the private members, right? So it is forbidden to all the users as well as outside the class. So these three concepts that we will see one by one, but before that we will discuss the advantages of encapsulation and data hiding. So the first advantage, that is increased security. As we have already discussed, not all the users can access whatever the data attributes as well as the methods or the function. Same way, if you want to limitize whatever the scope of particular data, if you want to hide the data, then you are having access modifiers are there, public, private and protected. With the help of these access modifiers, you can use or you can increase the security of your code, of your program, of your application. Second advantage of encapsulation as well as data hiding, that is data control. Here you can avail, or say for example you are having two kinds of method, getter and setter method, as we already discussed, or you aware with these two methods in any of the programming languages. Getter method is used to get the data or to get the value of the attribute, and the setter method that is used to set the value of particular attribute. Now say for example you want to restrict which kind of data that can be set by particular method, so you can apply validations also. Say for example there is one method called set age. that method can set the attribute of the age, right, or the value of the age. So if you are requiring that age must be positive, not the negative number, then you can put some of the conditions, some of the validations here. So with the help of validation, which kind of data that can be modified or that can be inputted, that you can choose. Third, that is flexibility. Your data that can be flexible here, whatever the method that can use that particular data, that is flexible, depends on, say for example, you are having multiple classes are there in within one program, right? So you can define your data that can be accessible among which of the methods and how the data will be changed, the status. So this way you use your code flexible. Then after modularity, you already aware the concept of modularity, the program that is divided into multiple classes and each class contains its own logic. So no one can interact, or you can say that suppose one logic or one class that is limited to particular function. So module wise here logic will be divided. So it cannot disturb the other class if you want to try to debug or if you want to try to modify that particular class or particular module. So modularity concept, that is the advantage of this data heading, because whatever the data or task that can be divided among multiple classes in the form of modules, you can say that. Flexibility, that can be also you can apply that a particular class or particular module that access that particular data or a particular user can access that particular data. Accordingly, the flexibility that can be defined. So these are the basic advantages of encapsulation and data hiding. Now we can see one demonstration for each and every access specifier, so you can get more idea. First of all, we will discuss public members. So as we have already discussed, the members that you have defining the public that can be accessible outside the class, any of the user can access. In Python programming, how you can implement? So by default, whatever the attributes that you are creating, they are considered as the public. So there is no specific symbol or convention to mention that particular attributes or methods are public, right? So there is no specific convention in the Python. You can observe on the screen. Here one class that we have defined, my class. We have defined one constructor that is initialized init method. Then after value, that is one attribute. So self.public attribute. So here public attribute, that is normal attribute. By default it is public. So there is no specific symbol that you are using to modify, or if you want to change that particular attribute, there is no specific symbol in the Python. Then after you are defining one method, that is public method. With the help of this method, you can try to access the value of that particular variable, that is public attribute. So here we are creating one object, we are assigning one value, trying to print the value with the help of object, that object.public attribute. It is easily accessible because this attribute is public attribute. So you can get the value here 10, and you can also access that method because this method is also public, right? So this is the simple implementation of public members. Next is protected members. As we have already discussed, there is some restriction, only child classes as well as the class that can access whatever the methods as well as the attributes. Here, if you want to implement this concept in Python, how you can identify that particular variable that is, or particular attribute that is protected. So single underscore that you have to put before that particular attribute name. So other programmer can easily understand that particular attribute is protected attribute and it can be accessible within the class or the subclass, right? So you can put the restriction by using this underscore sign for knowing that other programmer can easily identify that particular variable. You can see in the demonstration, one class that we have created, one constructor that we have created. Then after self dot, you can observe here protected attribute. So this protected attribute, that is the variable name, and before that we have mentioned underscore sign, right? So that underscore sign itself indicates it is the protected attribute. Now we have created one child class, that is the subclass. Now as you already aware, public attribute that can be accessible from any of the class, outside the program. but here protected attribute that can be accessible from that class or from the subclass. So we have created one subclass and we are trying to access that particular attribute from the subclass. So it is possible here. You can see we have created one object. We are passing the value 20. So what happened? We are trying to access that protected attribute here. So technically it is wrong, but it can be allowed here to print the value of that protected attribute outside the class, right? But whatever the main fundamental, by using underscore sign, you can aware the other programmers or the user that this is the protected attribute and you have to taken care whenever you are using some kind of data. Then after you can see another object we have created of the child class and you can access that protected attribute or particular method. Then after, next is private members, the most restricted environment that you are creating. How in Python that can be implemented? So before that particular attribute, you can put double underscore sign to denote that that particular attribute is the private attribute. You can also print the value of that particular private attributes, or you can access the private attribute with the help of the class name itself. So whenever your code will be compiled, your Python code will be compiled and interpreted, in background that attribute will be changed or renamed with the class name itself. So you can observe here in the second point, whenever this code or whatever the code in which we are using that private attribute, that the name will be changed with the class name. So class name, then after the whatever the private attribute, right? So this way you can also access the private attribute. You can see with the help of one demonstration. So that interpreter that will add the class name, that is the mechanism is called name mangling. You can see here in the example, one constructor is created, private member that we have created with double underscore sign, and then after one method we are creating get private attribute. Now suppose you are trying to access that private attribute, right, from outside the class directly with the help of object name. Then the compiler will give you error message, that is attribute error, right? So this cannot be allowed. You can see we have put this in the comment portion. Suppose you want to access that private member, you can access with the help of method. So we are running or we are calling this method get private attribute to access that particular member. Another alternative that we have already discussed, that is called name mangling. So we are using the class name here and then after that particular attribute. So this way you can also access the private attributes, right? Now we are concluding our session. In today's session, we have discussed the concept of data encapsulation as well as data hiding. We have discussed 3 access specifiers, public, private and protected, how to hide data from outside world. In the next subsequent session, we are moving with the concept called data abstraction with the abstract class as well as the concept of interface. Till then, happy learning, happy coding. Thank you.
स्वाध्यायः परमं तप